evening. Welcome to the Pullman City Council meeting for this Tuesday, February 11th. MD, please call roll.
Mayor Johnson.
Present.
Councilmember Chapman.
Present.
Councilmember McCall. Here. Councilmember Parks. Here. Councilmember Records.
Here.
Councilmember Sorensen. Councilmember Weller.
Present.
Councilmember Wright.
Here.
Al Sorensen notified us he could not be here tonight. Do I hear a motion to excuse?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, under announcements tonight, we have 4 of them. And you have about 59 minutes left to get your ballot in for the Pullman Public Schools 2020 bond issue. And there's ballot places right upstairs. The bulk of next council meeting on next Tuesday, the 25th rather, will be devoted to a council work session on the long-anticipated downtown master plan. Public is welcome to come and hear the first report on the plan. Every third Saturday through April, Pullman Winter Market at the Brailsford WSU Visitor Center from 10 until 2 o'clock, next one February 15th. And February 22nd at the SEL Event Center, it's time for the Fur Ball and Yappy Hour for the Whitman County Humane Society. Those are the announcements tonight. We have a confirmation of appointment that's before the council tonight. I am recommending that Tina Mitchell be appointed to the Board of Adjustment. And I'm asking for council confirmation. Do I hear a motion? Moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, we now move to the American Legion Law and Order Awards. And we have our former police chief, Ted Weatherly, who is now considered the adjutant. I asked him if he was a supreme commander of Palouse Allied Forces. He said, no, the adjutant. So with that, Ted, thank you for being here, and thank the American Legion for being here to honor our first responders. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to introduce other members of the Legion. That's Al Legas, Sergeant at Arms, on the far left, your far left there. Jerry Coker, our historian, and this is James Dalton. He's a representative from the Washington State University Veterans Office, and also a member of our Legion. Mayor Johnson and City Council members, it is an honor to be here tonight to present the American Legion Maynard Price 52 Law and Order Awards. Our American Legion post is composed of wartime military veterans who honorably served this nation during World War I and from December 7th, 1941 until the present, and are committed to mentoring youth, sponsoring wholesome programs in our community, advocating patriotism and honor, promoting strong national security, and continued devotion to our fellow service members and veterans. The awards we regularly present are the Medal of Valor, which is not restricted to public safety personnel, but may be awarded to any person who distinguishes themselves conspicuously by actions that involve a serious risk to personal safety or welfare, wherein there is an act of heroism performed at the risk of serious injury. Eligibility for the Medal of Valor requires that the act of valor occurs in the city of Pullman. Then there's the Firefighter of the Year Award, which is restricted to a member of local, county, or state fire departments. Our post requires that the firefighter's actions must have occurred in or been involved on behalf of the city of Pullman. And the Emergency Medical Technician of the Year Award is restricted to certified firefighters who reside and are assigned within the state of Washington, and the recognition must have been for actions within the city of Pullman. The awards I've just mentioned to you have no candidates provided to our post for 2019. We encourage any citizen or public safety official to contact our American Legion post at Post Office Box 24 in Pullman 99163, or any American Legion member or member of the Pullman Police or Fire Department for nominations for the year 2020. The first award being presented tonight is the Outstanding Law Enforcement of the Year Award, which is restricted to a member of local, county, or state law enforcement agencies. Our post requires that the officer's actions must have occurred in or been involved on the behalf of the city of Pullman. The Pullman Police criteria for this award is that an officer's work during the past year that best exemplifies excellence in the law enforcement contributions to the police department and the community. Tonight, that award is presented to Officer Don Heroff. Officer Heroff, will you please come forward? While he's coming up here, and while he's up here, Pullman Police Chief Jerry Jenkins forwarded the nomination for this award and stated, Officer Don Heroff has been an officer with the Pullman Police Department since April 13th, 1999. He is one of the most senior officers in the department. Over the years, and most particularly in the last several, the department has relied on Officer Heroff's leadership, both informally and when filling in as officer in charge. In the last 2 years, all of the Pullman police sergeants have been replaced through attrition. Officer Heroff has been extremely helpful in making the transition a smooth and successful one. Officer Heroff has been a regular aide and advisor to his new supervisor. His depth and breadth of experience allows him to recognize small problems that have the potential to grow into complex problems and prevent that from happening. He has also been very vocal in his acceptance of the new leadership and to positive changes within the department. This example set by a senior officer in the department has helped improve morale. Officer Heroff takes a problem-solving approach to help citizens of Pullman. He often spends time to offer perspective to people who are having a difficult time dealing with the problems in their lives. Officer Heroff understands that sometimes listening to someone or offering insight, while less likely to reflect positively on a statistical way, offers a more effective long-term solution than taking enforcement action. This approach also exemplifies the Pullman Police Department's mission statement, which is policing our community with compassion and professionalism. A specific example of Don's leadership occurred on August 21st, 2019. Officer Heroff was assigned as officer in charge of swing shift when a suspect in a domestic dispute threatened his family with a firearm. This was a rapidly evolving situation that required the coordination of several officers. Officer Heroff worked as the overall scene incident commander, calling out the Whitman County SWAT team, hostage negotiator from both Pullman and Moscow police departments. He served as a vital link between Chief Jenkins and the SWAT commander. Officer Heroff had to make split-second decisions with regard to a complex scene that involved 28 police personnel and lasted more than 6 hours. His performance was exemplary, ultimately leading to a peaceful outcome. On behalf of American Legion Post 52, it is my honor to present the Don Heroff a certificate acknowledging the Outstanding Law Enforcement Officer of the Year. In addition, his name has been placed on a plaque that will be placed in the Pullman Police Department so people can see it. Don, congratulations.
Thanks, Chief.
Don, who hired you?
This young pup named Ted Weatherly.
Congratulations. The next two awards being presented tonight are the Humanitarian and Life-Saving Awards, which are not restricted to public safety personnel, but may be given to any member of the community who has either performed an act that results in the saving of a life or has performed an act that is considered humanitarian in nature. The first award is presented to Pullman Police Officer Brian Chamberlain. Officer Chamberlain, please come forward. While he's coming up, on January 19th, 2019, Officer Brian Chamberlain was assigned a call of a male subject who was possibly suicidal. The subject left a message saying, "Too late," and "goodbye." Officer Chamberlain called the subject who, time after time, hung up on him. But Officer Chamberlain persisted, and after the 19th time, the subject finally began talking to Officer Chamberlain, telling him that he was committed to killing himself. Officer Chamberlain, who is a trained crisis negotiator, kept the subject on the phone, ultimately persuading him to reconsider his decision. The subject told Officer Chamberlain he was in a remote, rural location in Idaho. While on the phone with the subject, Officer Chamberlain coordinated with the Latah County Sheriff's Department, which is where Officer Chamberlain believed the subject to be. Latah County Sheriff's deputies found the subject's vehicle but were not able to locate him. Officer Chamberlain asked the subject if he would be willing to walk to his car and meet with deputies, but the subject said he would not do it. He would only trust Officer Chamberlain for a meeting. Officer Chamberlain drove to the Latah County Sheriff's Department and was transported by a deputy to a remote location. During this time, Officer Chamberlain maintained telephone contact with the subject. He persuaded the subject to provide him with a GPS coordinate. When the male advised him he could see deputies approaching the location, Officer Chamberlain gave the male specific instructions about how to surrender in order to ensure the safety of himself and the deputies. Deputies were able to safely detain the subject, who was found to be in possession of a pistol and ammunition. The male was treated by medics at the scene for hypothermia and dehydration, as he had not dressed appropriately for winter weather. Officer Chamberlain worked for more than 4 hours on this case and spent approximately 3 hours on the phone with the subject. This subject had the mindset, opportunity, and tools to commit suicide. There is no question that Officer Brian Chamberlain likely saved a life that day. This is one example of Officer Chamberlain's dedication to helping people in distress. He possesses an extremely high amount of empathy. He has a natural ability to connect with people who are suffering and is often asked for by name by those who he has helped in the past. On behalf of the American Legion Maynard Prize Post 52, it is my honor to present Officer Brian Chamberlain with a certificate acknowledging the American Legion Humanitarian and Life-Saving Award. Brian, congratulations. Brian, who hired you?
That's going to work for a few years.
Okay. At this time, I ask that Mike Heston come forward. On Tuesday, April 9th, 2019, 1.21 inches of rain fell on the rain-soaked ground in the Pullman area. Now, I want to say that this life-saving humanitarian award did not originate from an official of the city of Pullman, but it originated from members of the Maynard Price American Legion Post 52 based on numerous reports and local news media information. Again, on Tuesday, April the 9th, 2019, 1.21 inches of rain fell on rain-soaked ground in the Pullman area. Missouri Flat Creek that enters Pullman near Terraview Drive quickly rose and overflowed. According to the Moscow Pullman Daily News, Deputy Public Works Clayton Forsman was quoted as saying, "This one was almost a flash flood." The mobile gas station on North Grand was surrounded by water. The Tractor Town Square complex was flooded. North Grand was closed from north of Stadium Way to Whitman Street because of the flow of water on Grand. 22 members of the public were stranded or trapped and needed rescue assistance. One citizen who was eventually rescued had cut her hand, and another person at the mobile station had a medical problem requiring immediate assistance. Members of the fire department had to make a decision on a method to rescue persons. The city of Pullman does not have high water rescue equipment, as do many larger jurisdictions in flood-prone areas, particularly in western Washington. But the city does have a very large front-end loader that is used by the Public Works Department. According to the news reports, firefighters used the front-end loader to make multiple rescues, including a group of 8 people from the mobile gas station, one of whom was having a diabetic emergency. In all, 22 people were rescued, including an infant. Mayor Johnson is quoted as saying, quote, "Did our officers and firefighters in maintenance operations do the very best under extenuating circumstances? Yes, they did."
They certainly did.
Unquote. In October, the news media reported that Pullman was fined $2,700 by the Washington Department of Labor and Industries for safety violations in the April 9th flooding incident. It was reported that the first violation occurred when the fire department used a front-end loader carrying 3 firefighters at 4 different locations during the flood. The state said the violation was due to the operator having, quote, "no swift water rescue training," unquote. The second fine came from allowing firefighters wearing their gear to be unsecured in the bucket of a front-end loader without personal flotation devices or a helmet appropriate for water rescues. The last fine was due to the city not providing and requiring, quote, "the use of appropriate safety devices and safeguards, including in allowing an employee to ride unsecured in the front-end loader." The members of the city of Pullman who participated in this incident distinguished themselves conspicuously by their actions and their decisions. They took direct action wherein exceptional or heroic courage is apparent. They took actions that promoted human welfare, including the saving of lives and the alleviation of suffering. Often we hear firefighters and police officers say words to the effect, "We were just doing the job we were hired to do." But in spite of the claimed violations by the state of Washington, the initiative and innovation of these members must be recognized by the American Legion. The recipients who will receive a certificate stating Humanitarian Life-Saving Award 2019 from our post were Pullman Fire Department Captain Eric River, Lieutenant Chris Volk, Fire Marshal Chris Waring, Deputy Fire Marshal Tony Nutman, Firefighter John Erickson, Firefighter Joseph Branson, Firefighter Roy Godina, Firefighter Dane Hausk, Firefighter Mark Sugden, Reserve Firefighter Angela Teal, Reserve Firefighter Michael Chaplin, and Reserve Firefighter Cameron Gale. Thank you very much. Dina? All right. Congratulations. Congratulations. Congratulations.
First rank.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. We appreciate all the work that these people do and our ability to come in and make these presentations in your presence. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted, for being here today, and the rest of the members of the American Legion for honoring our firefighters and our police officers. And again, I think every one of us, when we were standing up applauding all of you for the heroic work you did that night of that flood. We thank you again. I was with our chief when we were over testifying for the Labor Committee in Olympia, the LNI case. Unfortunately, Joe Schmick, our state representative, said it didn't make it out of committee, but he will continue to work on that to give the director of LNI some discretionary power that he apparently doesn't have right now. But anyway, every one of you did an outstanding job, and thank you so much. Thank you, Ted. Now it's timely that Mike is up in front because it's time for an annual report.
Shall we wait or make it?
Why don't you wait for them to clear out? It was nice that our citizens cooperated tonight, and we didn't get a call 911 while they were getting some awards. Last night, I swear they were going out about every half hour with calls all night long. It just seemed like one right after the other, so.
Seems like that sometimes.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. This is a 2018 report, so I apologize for the lateness of it. It's a busy year for us, so I'll be following up with the 19 report here soon. So in your packet, you should have it. So on page 1, it was a busy year for us. We had a retirement and some promotions. We improved our fire protection class rating. We improved our ambulance billing, and then we did some improvement in our firefighter 1 and 2 certifications for the department. You see the call volume on page 1 for the last 5 years, in both fire and ambulance calls, and then total. The percentages pretty much remain the same, so EMS calls is about 70% of our call volume, and fire calls are about 30%. And then there's a general breakdown on the right side of the calls, how we report our calls to the state. So, page 2. Our total department responses were 2,624, which were down about 260 calls, about 9%. And a lot of that's due to our limited calls for providing out-of-town transfer for basic life support transfers. So that's kind of where most of that call volume came from. Overall, we had 3,372 total station responses, where both stations had to respond to the call, which is down about 9%, which is good. So that's an indication that our 4-platoon system is working, because we can put folks into staffing positions early on that are predicted to be vacancies. So that's where that comes in, and that helps a lot. And you'll see an improvement of that as well as we get farther into our staffing model. Station 1 had a few more calls than Station 2, about 300, and that's because the hospital's in their response area as well as 2 elder care facilities, so those keep us very busy. And on the bottom, you can see the concurrent calls, which are back-to-back calls. So before we get back from the first call, we have the second call. So it's pretty much steady at about 33%. So that's a pretty common statistic of our back-to-back calls throughout the day. Page 3, no surprises with the time of day and the day of the week calls. That's pretty steady, as well as the breakdown we have for the total medical and fire calls by the city, by different hills that we have on. One thing to note is that on the far right side, the College Hill and WSU campus is about 45% of our call volumes. So to WSU and student-driven calls on College Hill. Obviously, we have students living all throughout the whole city, but those have a combined area in those apartments. On page 4, breaking down the fire calls, we did 726 calls total. So over 400 of those are false type calls. So 28% of our call volume. The main thing I want to point out here is our average response time, which is the time we get toned out to the time we get on the truck, and includes the travel time from the fire station or wherever we are to the scene. So that total average response time, we've decreased it by about 40 seconds compared to the year before. And one of the main reasons we're doing that is because we put monitors up on the fire stations that have the CAD information from dispatch. So as soon as they punch it in on screen, we can see that, and we can get up and get a head start and get headed out the door, get going. And now, because sometimes it takes 2 or 3 minutes to dispatch the call before we get notified, so that gives us that little bit more of a jump. So, and actually, sometimes the staff get out the door so fast the dispatch hasn't even paged it yet. So they're going in a route before the call gets paged sometimes if they get tied up in dispatch dealing with taking that information. So that's been a great benefit for the department.
You could certainly hear that yesterday. I think we had a cardiac arrest on Monday, and boy, they were out the door within seconds. I mean, I think they were still toning by the time they were rolling on.
Yep, sometimes that happens. But the goal is to get out the door quicker, because those are some things that we can change. We can change getting out the door quicker. We can't change the response time because that's due to traffic, distance. So those are, and we can't control dispatch time either when time they page. So those are some things we can do. So thank you. You see a chart on the most common fire calls that we go on. And then below is a breakdown by city coordinates, by city quarters of where our calls are. And again, College Hill and WSU campus is about 63% of our call volume for fire calls. So when you look at that breakdown. On page 5, talk about fire loss, almost $300,000 in fire loss, probably about $1 million in what we saved. So we also save part of that building as well. So our biggest one was the fourplex apartment that we had back in September. That was probably our biggest fire that we had. And then I have some pictures of some other fires, of a garage fire and a fire. So cooking is typically our most common cause of fires, for sure. Page 6 has the Washington Survey and Rating, and we were rated that year in 2018. It's every 5 years we get rated. So scale is from 1 to 10, with 1 being the best, 10 being the worst. We were rated improved from a 5 to a 4. So when I first came here, we were at a 4, and then once we took over WSU in 2005, we dropped to a 5 because of all the extra stuff we have to do up there. And then in this last few years, we've made a lot of improvements and went back to a 4. So that's kind of where we are right now, which puts us in the top 20% of all the fire departments in the state for a rating. So it's our goal when we get rated in 5 more years to try and bump it up even more if we can. So those are some areas that we look for improvement. And it's a total team effort. We got to work with dispatch. We have to work with public works. We work with inspections. Everybody has their hand in this too. And they rate us only on fire. It's fire ability. So. Wildland mobilizations on the next page, 7. We had an active year in 18, and I have a chart down there. It kind of breaks down in the last few years of the revenue that's brought in for the apparatus revenue, and then what we pay out in personnel, which gets reimbursed as well. So you can kind of see that active has got pretty active. Last year, we didn't hardly have anything last year, and it was predicted to be a bad year. So every year you just never know with wildlands. So. But most of it's working on teams, and it really brings a benefit to the city by doing this as far as our personnel. Down at the bottom, we had a retirement of Captain Foster, almost 33 years in the fire service, and which allowed for a couple of promotions for Andrew Howe, promoted to captain, and Blake Richards to lieutenant. So that was pretty exciting for us. We have very little turnover in the department, as you know, so the opportunity to promote doesn't happen very often, which is pretty exciting to do. So. Emergency medical services on page 8, breakdown for that is just under 1,900 calls, 72% of our call volume. And again, a decrease of about 250 calls because we're not getting the calls for the non-emergency transfers for the most part. And the reason for that is we're not able to provide that a lot because of our staffing. We make sure we cover the city before we send folks out of town. So after a while, the hospital gets tired of calling us, so they go somewhere else. So packed ambulance out of Moscow is pretty much taking care of those non-emergency transfers up through our contract. So we handle the advanced life support stuff, the paramedic level stuff, emergencies out of Spokane. We do take care of those. So. And as well as our average response times for EMS also went down as well. So not quite as much as fire, because fire takes a while to get dressed, get out and do the stuff. Ambulance we can jump on and go. So that also decreased due to those monitors on the station. We transport 60% of the time when we go on calls, and then the breakdown between advanced life support and basic life support is about 50-50 when we go on those types of calls from being dispatched. When we get there, that sometimes changes by the outcome of the patient. So breakdown of the most common calls are there, and things that have asterisks by them or have some alcohol drug related as a contributing factor sometimes on those calls that you see with the asterisk. So when they come in as an alcohol patient, for example, it could come in many different ways because they fell, because of sick calls, just other types of calls, not just necessarily alcohol. So it just depends on how they code them at dispatch and how they call that in. Our medical calls broken down by quadrant of the city, pretty similar to what it has been in the past. So again, College Hill and WSU campus, about 40% of our call volume, just on the medical side of it. So. Page 9 is the fire prevention and investigations. So very busy. We've got a couple people in that office to actively engage in plan reviews. Over 138 plan reviews they did that year. 113 for the city, 25 for WSU. And WSU had a couple of large buildings with the Global Animal Health Phase 2, as well as the plant sciences building as well. And then a couple big projects downtown. The Hills on Grand was a big project that got started, and the Evolve on Main took a lot of our time as well, so, as it did for the rest of the city folks. I want to highlight down towards the bottom, fraternity inspections really improved. The fire prevention folks wearing and took it upon themselves to have pre-meetings and get ahead of the game and meet with the folks and let them know what kind of things we're looking for and what they can improve on. And it really helped. From that year, they increased by 30% of the inspections for first-time completions. So typically sororities pass the first time, hands down. Fraternities, not so much. We have to go back. So this one, we went from 9 first time to 12, so that's a pretty huge improvement. First time passing when they do inspections, so saves us some time. And we're going to continue to work on that as well. Page 10 talks about public education, which is one of our main priorities in the city. And one of them is doing our open house, so it was a huge success again at Fire Station 1. And we had hundreds of people come to that. And one of the highlights of that was we did a car seat fitting station next door to Heritage Tire, so the line was long the whole time where we could look at your car seats, evaluate them, and fit them for the people. And then we created some other opportunities after that by setting up some inspections later on. So as you can see, Sparky's ahead of the crowd up there, as well as doing tours. We were busy with doing that. And then the library reading at the book reading at the library is always a popular thing for the firefighters to do. So, as well as watching the little folks try on fire gear at the 4th of July on Lentil. So that's always good to see those little tiny sets of gear, so they just love them. We try to keep an eye on them, make sure they don't take them home with them too sometimes. So. Last page, page 11 is on training. So big push for us is to get the folks certified even at a higher level, so firefighter 1 and 2. So Chief Lamoureux in training applied for a grant, about $82,000 worth, which helped pay for the overtime and books and all those things. So we worked on that through 18 and into 19. And we did 100 folks that participated and passed with 100%, which is awesome. So we're one of the few departments in the state that has everybody in our department certified at the national level to firefighter 1, firefighter 2, and hazmat. So you can get certified at the state level, but that's only good at the state. The national level lets you take that certification anywhere. So it's pretty impressive. And then we carry that on to our reserve program as well. So those folks have the same opportunity to get that certification as well. So. And that concludes my report. Happy to entertain any questions.
Questions, comments? Okay. Nathan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Chief. I first want to just recognize your continuing work on the Institutional Biosafety Committee up at WSU, which looks at, some of the biological hazards that I know your staff have to deal with. And if you weren't the front line, I mean, it would be a challenging situation. So I wanted to recognize that. I do have a few questions, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Okay, so when looking at the falls, that's pretty significant on page 8. And I know several years ago at ASWSU they had discussed how people were falling through windows. I know we've had that issue quite a bit. Do you know if these are generally falls just on sidewalks with ice, out of windows because of intoxication?
Yeah, good question. These falls are probably 95% elderly falls.
Okay, all right.
One of the most common falls is go on.
Yeah.
And those are things we'll target in the community to help eliminate or alleviate those kinds of things with tripping hazards and handrails and so.
Gotcha. I appreciate that.
So when we go into a home and somebody has an issue with that, we'll be looking around and trying to give them some suggestions and help them clear up their areas so to keep that. Because as you know, we're trying to keep folks in their homes as long as possible. And the fall can, boy, really be disastrous to folks.
Yeah.
Yep.
So.
Another question, with the vehicle accidents, do you have a breakdown, or maybe it's between you and police, of the alcohol, if these are in relation to alcohol?
I don't. I'd have to work with Gary to see. Reports, we don't really market that it's an alcohol-related call.
Gotcha.
We will report that in the narrative if we recognize that possibly on their breath. But as far as relating that to actual drug impaired or that, we would not do that. So
Okay.
I can definitely work with Chief Jenkins to see if they track those kinds of things. So.
Awesome. I think just the very last thing is, working with the Palouse Discovery Science Center now, I know they've expressed so much how they appreciate yourself and and the staff, what they do with the fire safety. It's one of the most popular exhibits, and I think also it's important to discuss with the entire council. I know Mr. Mayor, Al Sorensen, and myself, we've all gone to the Hammer facility through the union, and that's really, I feel, important for newer council members. I don't know if anyone else has had a chance, but to see how much you have to go through. So
We've
that's
got two
very
city
important.
administrators do it too.
Yeah, Adam and, what Mr.
Workman did,
Yeah. So,
Yeah, that we really appreciate you participating in that, so shows a great interest to the firefighters that folks care about that, so.
just amazing.
Eileen?
I saw 416 or so false calls. Is that mostly electronic hiccups with, or how would you characterize that number?
Sometimes it's people working on the alarms, sometimes it's construction workers not telling us. A lot of times it's accidental activation through people smoking marijuana in the residence halls. So anything goes off, steams in the showers, those kinds of things. Just the fire alarm, cold weather will set off the fire alarm sometimes if the heat is turned down, so. WSU does a great job. If we have one that's an issue, like say steam from a shower coming out of a bathroom, they'll relocate those for us or change those over to like a heat detector instead of a smoke detector if the law allows that. So we work very hard at minimizing those false alarms. So.
And the goal, of course, is accuracy and dispatching the right thing to the right person who may need it.
Yep, exactly. We have over 250 buildings on campus that have alarm systems in them. So that is a big reason for a lot of those calls. So.
Fortunately, the microwave popcorn issues have gone down considerably, so, especially from the Honors College, where we used to get called a lot.
Microwave popcorn is not our friend.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. It's not a friend in many cities.
But,
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of fraternities and sororities have a lot of alarms for us too. So, cooking is really the most common issue for smoke alarms. That's the most common cause, a lot of those too. So, and again, we try to educate those folks on that. So. A lot of burnt cookies.
Not Sarah's.
My mother-in-law used to cook to the smoke alarm.
Yeah?
Yeah, when the alarm went off, it was done.
Yeah, Brandon?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, no, thank you. I will be doing fire ops, whatever the official name is, in March. I'm excited about that. So, yeah, no, I've heard good things.
I hope you get in shape. You just, really start working out because they're going to put you through it.
Awesome. So let me ask about medical billing, because that's something that you brought up before, and we were going to outsource some of that to a company to help get some of that money back. So how's that going?
Going great. We outsourced the actual billing part to Systems Design, a company widely used in the Northwest. So we were probably 10 months behind with billing when we started doing that, because we only have one person that's doing ambulance billing, which is a lot. And since we started doing that, within several months, we were all caught up to within 2 weeks of our ambulance billing. So when a call goes out, which is fantastic. So now our ambulance person, Brenda Davison, that does it, can focus on the challenge patient calls, which are a lot. Because we're lacking information, we're lacking signatures, we're lacking all those things. So she is bird dogging all those and making that work. So she can focus and spend time on that part of it. So we're inserting all those documents, sending them off to Systems Design. So, and the rate that they are increasing is more than what we have acquired in the past. And it's allowed us to do other things as well. So it's still a full-time job for her to continue to do those kinds of things, to chase those problem child calls down, and living in a community where we have a transient population that we don't get good addresses for. You can imagine how many calls we're chasing down constantly with the university. So that works out well. The other key to this is we're allowed to focus on another program called GEMT, is the Ground Emergency Medical Transportation. So it's the Medicare calls that we have to take a certain percentage of write-offs for that. So through that program, what we do is they calculate out what our actual costs are for our department. Per ambulance call, they multiply that times all the calls, and we get 50% of that revenue back as well. So, which is, last year was about $180,000, which is going to go up significantly next year. So that's another opportunity for us to increase the revenue from ambulance billing. So.
Chief, you had mentioned that we don't have a lot of people leave. Occasionally, you may get 4 new firefighters. How's hiring for that? How's filling those positions going?
Hiring's good. We hired the 2 last year, so it worked out well. We had to dismiss one of them, unfortunately, so we replaced that person. So we hired the 2 more paramedics that started the first of the year. So, and then 3 of them we sent to the fire academy right off the bat, but one of them had kind of a minor medical issue. We had to pull back from the academy, which will, hopefully surgery will take care of that. We got them on working at the station on days now, but the 2 are at the academy right now, and they're doing very well, getting good reviews. So I'm a little nervous there a little bit because part of the academy, they were going to use their housing for the new coronavirus folks. It's an alternate spot for that, so they were putting our folks up in motels down the road from North Bend, but that ended, I think, as of today, so they're back into the quarters as well, and they didn't have any patients in there, so. But they were going to clean it, which would have been 10 times cleaner than it probably was before, so, with the firefighters in there. So they're doing really well. We appreciate the support to send folks to that academy, because before we tried to train people on duty as we go, and there's just no way to do that. Too many interruptions, too many calls, inconsistent. They come back certified, trained in the firefighter 1 and 2 in hazmat, just like we did the rest of the department. So they are ready and rocking. We bring them back, put them on days for about a month, and then we put them to work. So we're looking to they'll be back, this group will be back at about April, May, and then we'll get them on light duty, or get them on days for a couple of months, and then we'll, when we get the 3rd one in there, then we'll look at increase our staffing at Station 2, the minimum staffing to 8. Right now it's 7, 4 at Station 1, 3 at Station 2. Once we get those next 3 on board, then we'll go to minimum 8. So 4 at each station, which will allow that station to take care of its own at that end, because right now, if they don't have the 4, this station has to come cover. So that'll really cut back on the response for the dual response, and we can handle more calls that way. So that's a great benefit for us and the citizens. So
Awesome. I appreciate that, and I'll just mention that the spouse of one of our new firefighters let me know how excited that they were because he had been hired into this position, and they left Pullman. Like, they're totally 100% committed to Pullman, but the option wasn't there, and they're coming back, and they're like really dedicated to Pullman, and they're really excited about this. So not only are we filling these positions, but in some cases, people that absolutely Pullman is in their heart. So
yeah, we have some great hires out there. That big list. It's hard to make those decisions, and it's really helped with us to go to the recruiting sites and actual recruit when they do the testing. So that's been helpful. We got that tip from the Pullman PD, so they do that as well. So
well done.
We had like 150 candidates for the firefighters that we had to whittle down. So it was a lot.
Well done.
Good problem to have.
Any other comments or questions? All right. Thank you, Chief Huston.
Chief, thank you.
Appreciate it. Next item on the agenda is item F, the consent agenda. These items are considered routine in nature, and the council's had a chance to look these over ahead of time. Do I hear a motion to read by title only?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? With that, Laura McAloon, our city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. Your consent agenda consists of a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes of the regular meeting of February 4, 2020, and approve them as submitted. A motion to approve accounts payable disbursements totaling $1,298,283.23. A motion to approve accounts payable disbursements totaling $63,824.45, and a motion to approve payroll direct deposits totaling $4,583.90.
Is there any item the council would like on for discussion? Seeing none, the consent agenda consists of items 1 through 4. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That we now move to the regular agenda. First item will be a discussion of the 2020-25 Parks, Facilities, Recreation Comprehensive 5-Year Plan. Kirk Damon and Alan Davis will be presenting.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. This evening, Alan Davis and myself are here to discuss and share a draft of our comprehensive 5-year plan for our parks, facilities, and recreation program. Staff has spent nearly about a year and a half working on this plan on and off, and as recently as yesterday afternoon, got to spend a couple hours with Councilmember McCall and doing some edits and revisions and some explanations of why things are such. So thank you for that. Our plan really serves for multiple reasons. One is to make sure that it's still relevant with community needs and our goals and objectives that we've identified, are they still current? Also serves as kind of a report card for staff. Are we offering the right programs? What's the quality of the programs we're offering? How are our parks, facilities, and maintenance, how do those stand up to the wants and desires of the community? And then also through our survey is really to look at future desires and needs of the community, and some of those things that come out are, again, what future programs are people looking for? What facilities do they want to see? Do they want the mayor's ice rink? Do they want council member Chapman's pickleball courts, festivals, more concerts, those type of things? What new park amenities or structures are we looking for? What identifying things that might not be on our radar screen but want or the community wants to be replaced, such as year-round restrooms in our parks, which I'm sure Alan can talk to, and the challenges of doing such. Trails and connections are another important desire need that becomes identified. An area that I would kind of like just to point out is through our plans over the years, I look back at our Prop 1 and 2 that we ran in 2018 and those projects that were in there, such as in Prop 2, addressing city playfields, dugouts, score boxes, fencing, Rainy Park, pool improvements with restrooms, the trails, the ADA path at Sunnyside Park, the Atani Linear Path, Copper Basin, which will go in the near future, replacement of the Kruger Park Shelter, and then on Prop 1, the Recreation Community Center, which you all got to take a look at last week and see what that's going to offer and what potential that has to the Pullman community. All those projects really came out of our 5-year plan and the survey and input that we've got from citizens over the years. So it's been nice to take that input and then actually put it into, these bonds and do these projects and kind of get that checked off the list. Another important component is that the city maintains eligibility with the Recreation and Conservation Office, which is this state's arm for administering grants that we might apply for. A couple examples of grants are the Washington Wildlife and Recreation Program, which provides funding for developing and improving local parks, which requires a 50% match. The Youth Athletic Facilities Fund, which is to buy land and develop or renovate outdoor athletic facilities, again, a 50% match. And the Land and Water Conservation Fund, which is more geared to buying and improving current trails or buying land for future trails, which again is a 50% match. The Recreation and Conservation Office, they also establish 6 criteria that our plan must address. One of those is demand and need analysis, which is on page 34 of the document, or starts on page 34. And what this is really defining priorities after we do our survey and assessing, what the community wants. Some of the key findings from our survey is that over 90% rate parks as extremely or very important. 87% state that open spaces are important. Almost 60% indicate that money should be expended to upgrade our facilities that we have. And that's kind of a common theme sometimes in our survey is, let's take care of what we have and maintain what we have. Another, 40% believe they support the purchasing of land for future parks and natural areas. On the recreation side, nearly 86% believe recreation programs are extremely or very important, but keep working, keep identifying new programs. Probably the common areas for us are teens, open gym time, especially during the winter, which we're hoping with our new community center we can address, arts and crafts, and then concerts and festivals are always a big topic that people would like to see. Another part of that needs analysis assessment is a project that Alan Davis, along with the committee in the 2040 project, is to do a assessment of our current parks, but also identify areas in Pullman of our future parks. So on page, I think 39 is kind of a overlaid combined map that identifies where our current parks are in Pullman, by size. You've got your neighborhood, community, kind of a mini park, and then regional parks. And then part of that as well was to develop a checklist for future development. And like I said, it kind of got broken into 4 different sizes of parks on page 37 and 38. Your mini, your neighborhood, your community, and a regional, which is a very large-scale park that Pullman has yet to develop. So if you look at that map, I think a lot of the growth and where they're projecting, future parks would be to the west and to the north as Pullman develops. Another component of the plan is, do we have a capital improvement program, which can be found on page 40, which is a list of such things as, what have we done in our trail system, Rainy Park improvements, ADA Sunnyside improvements, Mary's Park, the work that they've done there, future Emerald Point Park, and just really listing out, defining what that project is, estimated cost in doing such, and then what years are we going to do. So make sure that we have a plan in place for that. Public involvement, did we provide the public opportunities to provide their ideas and suggestions to be integrated into the plan? We had 2 open houses back in the fall of 2018. 164 people participated in our online survey and through physical copies of the survey. And then we also shared with our Parks and Rec Commission and Lawson Garden committees as well. Also, do we have an inventory of our current parks and facilities? So that's on page 62 and 63, and just lays out what those facilities are, what their sizes are, where they're at in Pullman, and kind of the nature of the activity there as far as a high, low, medium priority to the community. And then goals and objectives on page 78 through 82 that we've developed through input that, we recognize as staff that we need to address, and then also through the survey. Some of the park short-term goals going forward is improve our park facilities, enhance transportation corridors, pedestrian paths, continue the beautification of Grand Avenue Greenway, and also continue to expand and develop our ADA transition plan and be committed to providing and accommodating citizens with disabilities and special needs. Long-term for parks would just create, one would be, complete Lawson Garden master plan as we can, develop parks with growth in Pullman and open spaces as well, and then potentially establish 2 to 3 acres out of the cemetery of the undeveloped land that's there, which is about 7 acres. For recreation, some of our short-term goals, continue to provide a comprehensive recreation program and meet community needs. Continue to work cooperatively with some of the local organizations, or Pullman School District, WSU, Moscow Parks and Recreation, some of the local businesses here in Pullman as well. And just make sure that we're being proactive and identify new interests and needs. Also, work with our WSU students and provide hands-on experience. We probably have over 300 students that come through our department on a year to help with our youth sports programs, volunteer in the senior center, provide practicum and internship opportunities for them.
And Kirk, it's always interesting when we go to the Association of Washington Cities meetings, and people will come up to us and say, I was an intern with City of Pullman, and now I'm working for the city over here at such and such. So you have a lot of outreach.
We find when we go to our annual Washington Parks and Recreation conference, especially Megan Vining, how many people in the state of Washington have cycled through the university, through our office, have been part of our program. It's very rewarding, but as the years pass and you start seeing all these kids start coming up to you, it's like, I've been in this quite a while. So, but yes, it is neat and rewarding to see that. Continue to support our Care to Share fund, which provides financial assistance to qualifying families so they can have scholarships to participate in recreation program. And probably our big long-term program, our goal for recreation is develop a multi-sport complex, cooperation maybe with the school district, Pullman Youth Baseball, Pullman Soccer Club, some sort of sports complex that is multi-year use and potentially year-round.
With an ice skating rink.
That can be part of it as well. Yep. And then finally, the last criteria is adoption, that the plan receive formal approval from a governing body. We shared the plan with our Parks and Rec Commission back in June, that they endorsed it unanimously, and then as staff, we would ask on February 25th, in 2 weeks, when we bring this plan back, that we receive your approval and adoption of it. Highlights that I'd also just point out in the plan is our existing operations, kind of new this last fall, was especially Alan taking on the government buildings and facilities as a new component for us. It also looks at, what did we do over the last 5 years through our goals and objectives, and how did we do in meeting those, and then going forward as well. Historical highlights on page 52 and 54 really kind of lays out what we've done. I think all the way back to first year we have in here is 1903, establishing the first park, which later became Krugel Park, all the way up to the paving of the Itania linear path. And I guess I would say that probably once a month at least, I'm grabbing this document off my shelf to see, what year did we do this, or through a conversation with somebody, it's a great historical perspective of where the department's been and what we've all accomplished. Such things as, budgeting revenue, what our departments look like, and the growth in both expenditures and revenue over the years. One of the things we added a couple years ago was our appendices. It starts on page 94, which really maps out each one of our parks that are here in Pullman and just gives us a good inventory of where they're located, the size of the park, a little description, what amenities are included, and that's just kind of been a great tool to have to pull off the shelf and look at occasionally as well. And then starting on page 122 is the results of our survey that we put out to the public. And I'm not going to go through that. Probably a couple of the takeaways that we glean from it is that, people value parks and recreation and the opportunities they provide here in Pullman. They're obviously importance to the quality of life. Trails and paths, make connections, add new paths whenever we can. I mean, that's a big one that always comes up for us. I mentioned earlier, maintain and take care of what we already have. Our Sunnyside as our community park, and then our neighborhood parks such as Rainey and Krugel are really gems, so that's, take pride in those and take care of them. And then also just acquire open spaces when available for future development, or, just to keep as a green and open space for people to go and enjoy. So.
This is the document that, the first one I could find was in 1970. And that's really what funded the improvements at City Playfield, developed Sunnyside and Military Hill Parks, brought all that on. And we've had a real good history with both RCO, the Recreation Conservation Office, and IAC, the Interagency Committee, because when we were doing the Downtown Riverwalk, they came back to us and offered us money to finish that. So another town couldn't, commit, and we got the money from them without even requesting it. So this has been really important to the city of Pullman. Happy to answer any questions, or try to.
Okay, Pat, we'll go with Pat first.
I'm always interested in funding, and, obviously there are a lot of costs involved with this plan. The majority of the funding comes from levies, comes from the Metropolitan Park District activity?
The majority of what we've developed probably off of bonds. We've been, like I said, with grants, we've been really careful on how we use those. Because, for instance, we've gone several times to improve trails and get money for that. And what you've got to look at is, with the Chipman Trail, we were able to do that because of the number of people that are involved. But when we went to do the Johnson Avenue path, Great for us, great for our loop and the rest of we're developing, but when you look at the number of people and then you look at the west side with some of these, it doesn't work very well. So, yeah, we've got funding coming from the Metropolitan Park District. You know, we try to use that 2% CIP money. We do find some small grants occasionally, but generally where we've developed is either through donations and then getting money through the bonds.
Thank you, Alan, appreciate it.
Brandon?
So, I'm a heavy parks user. That's just the stage of life that we're in right now. So, I appreciate you meeting with Councilmember McCall. I know she and I have talked at pretty great length about this plan, and really appreciate that this is not a year and a half of planning and then we have to turn around and approve this. I appreciate that you're giving us quite a bit of time here. It's not like bedtime reading. I mean, it's pretty dense, and it's obvious you spent a lot of time on it. So, I mean, I have a number of comments, and I'm happy to meet with you the way Councilmember McCall did.
That would be great,
Yeah,
because to be honest, this is, in all the years they've done this document, from when it started about this thick to where it is now, we haven't gotten much feedback except for the open houses,
Sure,
or except for those surveys. So yes, we'd be happy to hear that.
That's the one takeaway I have is, I hear 146 people responded, and I'm thinking, geez, out of our whole population, I mean, that's such a small sample size. It's almost unfair to you to take that and let that dictate, So that's a conversation we can have. What part of this doesn't pass the eye test for you, where you may get X number of people saying, hey, we go to Rainey Park and even way less use city playfields. But I took Councilmember McCall out to the city playfields once, and she was pretty astounded by how many people use it, not just for sports, but it is a park down there, and
Busy walking trail.
busy walking trail. And if you ask me at any time, do more people use Rainey Park than city playfields? No way. Right, but that's not what the survey results say. So how much, do you take in dealing with the survey and say, okay, this helps inform us, but this is not the end-all be-all, versus user groups that you talk to that may or may not have filled out the survey and stuff like that. I mean, I'd be really interested to get your take on that, and we can certainly take that offline. But key takeaway, I mean, there's a lot of information here, and I appreciate you doing your work because this matters to me and my family.
And I really, the new mapping system that we put in there for development, both within and outside the city limits, I think is really important, and it's something to keep in mind. So we make comments when things are being planned that way as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Ann?
And thank you for this. It's really very enjoyable also to read and realize how many great parks and areas we have in our city. When you talk about growth and planning for future park areas, how do you plan on having enough employees to maintain them, so grow your workforce?
Okay. My philosophy is anytime that you can get green space that you don't have to develop, we should grab it. Absolutely. Our issues become developers that want to give you something next to housing development and want that developed right away. That we can't do all the time. So the ones we've had come on, like Mary's Park, where we're able to do it over time, and now Emerald Point with the bond where we have some time.
Yes.
That's how I think we do it. You're right, we don't have the staffing. It's very tight. I think they do a great job with what we have. But having said that, anytime you can pick up green space, especially in an area like this where the only way you can expand is to either have it donated or actually buy ag-producing property to keep going out is really tough. I mean, we don't have a situation like Wawa had where they had a racetrack that was given to them, some water space, other things that they can continue to develop. So it is tough.
Okay. Dan, did you?
Yeah, I just want to say, I really like the layout of this report. It's very well thought out and well put together, really looking at it from a systematic approach. I think one thing that I think this could benefit from is a little bit more of some visualization of kind of the funding and the revenue and kind of spending, a little bit of the financial side of this in a little more compact analysis. There's a lot of financial information in here, but a lot of it is in the narrative.
Yeah.
And I think it would be helpful to have that kind of in a more compact.
And I think that's why, as staff, we're probably going in the direction of, we'd like to see a master plan, have a consultant and do this, because this is really getting quite a document for staff. So that's something we're looking at in the future as well, and it would help us address those other issues better, too.
And I'd echo Brandon, I'd be happy to schedule some time to meet with you one-on-one to talk about some of this.
That'd be great.
Nathan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, as has already been said, this is a dense document and it has a lot of great information. I will say, as I was looking through some of the different parks, of course, for me, McGee Park just stands out for locality. I will point out that something, and I did take quite a few notes and would love to meet as well. That area in particular is being used by a lot of multicultural and families for meeting areas, picnic areas, and I know, that's getting along, kind of getting older. I would say also, one of the challenges, and I didn't quite see it in here, but I brought it up a number of different times, is animals off leash in the parks, and this is becoming a larger challenge. And I will say that the introduction of the plastic bag or the doggy bag areas has actually reduced the droppings quite a bit. It does seem to be used a lot, despite the signs not being listened to for, off-leash type of things. And also, I'll just point out real quick, that basketball court, I think it's a great idea to resurface, but that's also being used as an off-leash dog area where people will let their dogs kind of run around there. So thinking about that when resurfacing, and I don't know how to control it, but just wanted to let you know. And the very last thing is, adults, especially, and college students, are using parks, it seems to be more, but a lot of the parks are geared towards the younger, and I keep thinking about the models you see with around the Pullman High School when they had the loop where the pull-up bars, and I'm thinking about that in Lewiston along the waterways. So
Well, one of the things that came up in the 2040 committee was exactly that. And so as we expand the playground like at Sunnyside, looking at possibilities for some large cable structures offset from the play structure itself, so that the parents with the little kids can be in one location and not, sometimes it's intimidation, but it's just able to get another group away a little bit.
Yeah.
And still get all that with the disc golf and everything. So looking at those things. And the diversity issue was discussed with that committee as well about McGee. How do you take all those user groups and make them work together in that little park?
Yeah.
So we may be doing some different landscaping in there to help that in some fashion.
Great. It's a good document.
Eileen?
Yeah, I want to thank Alan and Kurt, and is it Marlene? Marlene, for having a heavy session with us on Monday afternoon. We did 2 hours at lightning speed going through this document, and I fully recognize that this document has been woven together from a lot of different materials. So it just...
This is not the edited one yet, right? So you don't have all the addition, or the edits that we made.
All I have is my notes,
Right.
yeah, and if I showed them to other
I have
members,
a few
my council
notes,
members, it would scare the rest of the council to death, the amount of ink that's on this thing. So, but I really want to thank you for taking the time to go through this and clarify some things and make it, give credit where credit was due. That's the most important thing, and give credit to the voters who have expressed support with their dollars, and our great staff. And yeah, it was a very, very good session, and I was tired, but I was very pleased when we got done, and I think it's a quality document, and it's headed for even better, and it shows the pride we have in our parks. And I would definitely support hiring someone to do a master plan for our parks, somebody who really knows. and take that, so you guys can do your work, and we can do our work, and that document can come to us, and we can evaluate it as such.
Well, hopefully that'd take it to the next level, I
And
think.
absolutely take it to the next level. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Like I say, it was tough sled, and I really sort of took this document to the woodshed, and they held up pretty well.
So gathering the comments, they'll be meeting with you before the 25th, so we can
That's
see the
right,
final
yeah.
document prior to that
Correct.
meeting then. Great.
Yeah.
So, and Kurt?
Just, there was a couple of questions, council member, records and right about revenue and expenditures, and on page 55 and 56, there is a kind of a every 2-year kind of snapshot of our budget, our total budget. Then on the revenue side, you can see what comes from the Parks Division, Recreation, and then Metropolitan Park District as well, and what our total revenue is in comparison to percentage of the overall budget, so, and what we're recouping there. So, and just something to look at, and certainly if there's more questions to bring forward.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for the presentation. Next comes the discussion, and again a discussion with the council tonight on the Complete Streets draft policy. You had it before you at the last meeting. There were some hints that you had some ideas, and Kevin?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council. As the mayor mentioned, we discussed this at the last city council meeting, and I just wanted to make sure, I think I heard one comment specifically about the policy from council member Records, and I added some verbiage to the document. I wanted to make sure that I captured the essence of what your comment was, and then also allow the council, any other council members who may have additional comments, the opportunity.
Okay. Brandon, I think that you were making a comment that you had some ideas too that you want to talk about.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the comment, but, so I'm trying to just get my head around, the relationship this would have with the CIP, in terms of the Complete Streets policy being kind of the way we do things, like a value of ours. Accepting, multimodal transportation as something that happens in 2020, to be sure, and how that would be tied to what essentially I see it as a funding mechanism. So I want to make sure that if we're saying here's the way we want to do things, that it's not always going to be tied with, well, that wasn't approved in the CIP this year. So that's what I want to try to reconcile. One of the things that had been proposed in an email that we had received, and I'm not asking for a motion on creating a new city board or commission regarding transportation. I think that's a bigger conversation that we need to have. But it seems like people that would understand those kind of policies, that seems like it would make more sense to deal with a Complete Streets policy than like CIP folks overseeing this. So maybe you could help me understand where CIP came into that.
So in a couple ways, I think. One is the makeup of the CIP committee. It's council members, planning commission members, member at large, and city staff. So it's a good cross-section, good reference, people with different backgrounds in the community. The committee understands capital projects. And one of the ways, or probably one of the main ways I see this working is when we have city projects that are coming up, street projects, for example, like the Spring Street, Crestview Harvest project later this year, we're kind of right at the infancy of the Complete Streets policy, but we're going to put traffic calming in there and some other measures. But we would vet that project with the CIP committee probably a year or two ago and say, hey, we've got this coming up in a couple years. This is what we're thinking as far as Complete Streets go and multimodal, and run those ideas by the committee, vet those, get some buy-in. That's how I envision sort of using the CIP committee. As far as maybe more overall policy and projects in the future, and maybe we should do this there, and maybe we should look at this over here. I mentioned at the last meeting that we've got a request for qualifications out now for bike ped master plan, and so I think we'll get a lot community input, we'll get folks to give us their ideas, and we'll put this master plan together of the projects that we want to do, and that will help inform CIP going forward as well. So that's how I kind of see the two processes working together. When we have specific projects, we would run those by the CIP committee, hopefully 1 or 2 years in advance so that we can properly budget for them. Because if we start adding things sort of right before we go out to construction, we probably don't have enough money in the budget for those sorts of things. So hopefully I've answered your question.
Yeah, and again, as I said, I'm trying to reconcile all these different ideas. You know, my worry is, well, there's always a need, so we need a new generator for City Hall, so, you know, even though we've said...
We have a different funding mechanism too, though.
Sure.
Yeah.
But that would be the worry is, you know, if we're saying that Complete Streets, this is the way we're moving forward on things, but are we going to be doing that if some committee, CIP in this case, says, you know, we need this new generator instead, right? We don't have money for that. So that's what I'm trying to... Right.
So a lot of, you know, with Public Works, we have many different funds, and so we've got the street fund and the arterial street fund, and that revenue goes to projects in the public streets and right-of-way. So they wouldn't be competing with general fund money typically, so.
Okay.
Eileen?
Yeah, I was under the impression that the CIP committee was sort of dropped in here as a matter of convenience and expedience, so we could get this going off the ground. We've been talking about Complete Streets for a very, very long time, and I really enjoy working with the people that are on CIP right now. I think we've got a really talented group of people with a lot of different perspectives, and I don't think there's any problem in us understanding that this money is over here and this money is over here, and then making, you know, evaluations and suggestions, because I don't really think that committee would have any power in that capacity. It would be more of an advisory capacity, am I?
Right. I mean, I think we're vetting these ideas. You know, if the committee says, hey, we really think this needs to happen, we're not just going to ignore that. We're going to try to figure out a way to make that happen.
Because as it evolves, it may evolve into a separate committee, and I can see some people out here that I would love to have on that committee. So, and I will be talking with them, as I always do, about what could be, you know, what input we can get. So I think this is a great place to start, but it's not necessarily where we'll be in 5 years.
Other comments? One of the things, when you read the letters to you and when they're talking about Complete Streets, I think people automatically, and it goes back to a question that Pat asked of parks, they automatically think, okay, here's Complete Streets and here's your funding. And that doesn't work that way. It's going to be an effort to get that kind of funding, especially after 976 passed. And that's all we heard when we were in Olympia, about all the issues that they have in funding and a $450 million hole. And even that's impacted Transportation Improvement Board, because we've heard, you know, some comments about that. We're hoping that we can have Complete Streets, and we can hope we have the funding mechanism for it, but that's also a consideration right now. So, but this, I really, just like Eileen said, we've been after Complete Streets for a long time to get the multimodal, and obviously there are some streets up on College Hill that are so narrow, and you have private property, and you can't do, but there are some areas. And one of my favorite ones I've been talking to quite a while has been on Airport Road and Terraview, because that's just a logical place for the new terminal. And to be able to bike out there or to walk out there or have a bus go out there is really important. And I'm so happy that you're talking about it right now. So that's great. Other comments?
Well, just one comment real quick, and that is, we have to start somewhere. I mean, if we just keep talking about the big project and not identifying the little bites that you have to take out of it, you just kind of get into some paralysis there. But, I mean, this is a great place to start, and we're looking at it, and I think it's wonderful. Thank you, Kevin.
Dan?
I just want to say I appreciate what you added, based on my comment at the last meeting about, you know, having some sort of way to check on making sure that the ADA utilities are being, the ramps and the push button signals are being maintained access through winter. And so I appreciate the language. I like it that it's not going to be putting too much burden on city staff, that it would get to the point where it's not doable. But it is recognizing that is an issue we need to be monitoring and keeping an eye out for as well.
Any other comments? Kevin, do you feel you've had enough input now from everybody that you,
I do, and so my
and I know
plan,
there's still people sending you emails from time to time.
my plan at this point would be to bring back the version you have here tonight with the ordinance at the, is it the 25th or the 10th? Be at one of the next council meetings, so.
Any
I
other
think
comments?
that's fair because that still gives us time to
Get fit.
talk with Kevin, yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
With that, is there any new business to come before the council tonight? Seeing none, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Move a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?